Just in case you missed it, it's the top 5 sports talkers of the day. Now, it's time for Dan Barreiro's Top 5 at 5.
Lavelle, Neal the third, 5:30. Is there any chance he's going to surprise us by coming into studio today? Any rumors to that effect?
I can tell you he'll be on the show, but I texted him, "Are you good for 5:30?" And he said, "Oh, sure." So he seems like he was a little taken back.
He forgot?
I don't know.
It was Friday. He thought I was off. Just because Guardsy's off every day doesn't mean I am. Unbelievable.
And I wouldn't be.
No, not you. Brett Blakemore is in charge of today's edition of the Top 5 at 5.
And let's start here.
Time now for the obligatory Kevin Fallness Minnesota Wild mention.
Well, don't look now, but the Wild have won 3 in a row. At some point, we've got to think about just not playing any more home games.
That might be the answer.
They leave the X, and all of a sudden they're winning.
Bizarre.
4-0 in Montreal, including my guy, who I love to champion, Liam Ogren.
To try and keep the Wild in business. He does. Threw it in front. Ogren trying to dance in front. Couldn't get a shot through. He comes back to Ogren, and he scores! Liam Ogren! With his second career NHL goal, his first this season, the Wild draw first blood in the second period. They're in front of the Canadiens, 1-0.
Well, the real story of the game, as we opened the show with, was Marc-Andre Fleury. Here's this.
Giveaway and a quick shot by Anderson, stopped by Fleury. Rebound in the slot. Loose puck. Anderson a try, and a right shoulder save by Fleury. Stopped him 3 times here on this shift alone. Struble to the blue line, right side. Broken stick for Hartman. A long shot by Struble, tipped wide in front. Canadiens making their proverbial push as they center. Two-pad slide as he robbed Anderson again. Now a point drop by Anderson, and that one went wide. Boy, the Flower putting on a show in the third on this sequence alone.
He was the story of the game before and after, on the ice, off the ice. It was the Marc-Andre Fleury night in Montreal. They win 4-0 up in Canada. They continue the Canadian tour against Ottawa. That's tomorrow, and you'll hear it right here on the Fan.
We started the show with the fact that every once in a while, sports finds, reaches, locates a sweet spot. And we could wait sometimes days, sometimes weeks, sometimes months, sometimes years before we reach that same sweet spot. But we keep watching and we keep listening because that's the goal and it's worth it, even if it takes a while to get there. And last night was one of those sweet spot moments. And did it hurt that Flower pitched a shutout, played as well as he did? No. But more importantly, however he was going to play, there was finally the attempt in the third period during a break in the action to make the sort of big salute that clearly had been planned by the Montreal Canadiens and their fan base. We've started the show with it. It's about basically close to 2.5 minutes, I think, of nothing but, the announcement by PA guy, first in French, then in English, and then the reaction from fans who damn well knew that their team was getting killed. He'd never played for Montreal, but they treated him as if he was one of their own, and he is. But it felt like it even went deeper than the fact that he is from there. It was a wonderful moment, perfectly choreographed, wasn't cheesy, didn't seem contrived, didn't seem manufactured at all. And for a sweet spot to be not the action itself, but a break in the action is why I found it so memorable. You can find it easily. Well, if you podcast 3 o'clock hour, we started very early with it. You can find it online pretty much anywhere. And I heartily recommend you listen and watch the long version. Don't just give up on it in 30 seconds, as odd as that sounds. Watch the entire, like I said, I think it's 2.5 minutes that we played. In that range. Mm-hmm. It's worth every second of it. And again, we've talked about this for years involving other athletes, including Kirby Puckett. There are players who are respected for what they've done just because they're so good. And then there are players above and beyond that who are beloved. For whatever reason, they just seem to click emotionally with fans, or maybe they seem more accessible, and Flower is in that classification. There's absolutely no question. Louis talked about it on the broadcast last night, that it goes beyond respect. It goes to being revered and being loved. He's one of those guys that everybody seems to gravitate towards. He's mastered that particular art. Now, the only X factor for me is you got to retire. There can't be, I think
Don't farve it.
Don't farve it and say, I've been convinced to get maybe one more year because that's what will take some of the spontaneity out of this. Wait a minute. What? We all did that and you're coming back? Come on. That's what makes people snarky and cynical again. So for his sake, and I think he's done. I think he's ready, quite frankly, the feeling I get. But that would be the one because Favre's done it and there are a couple of others said, well, on second thought, we're gonna milk the whole thing for another year.
Well, wouldn't you want to go out when you're making those sprawling saves and highlights instead of Fleur lets in another one. He's washed. He's done for. So I'd rather go out on top.
Yeah, there's no question. The idea of, oh my God, it's almost painful to watch him now. You don't want to see him like that. That's unsightly, and that has happened for many significant, very good contributing athletes. But I think this might well be it for him.
Let's talk Wolves here. They're getting red hot. 5-game winning streak. They extended it against the Jazz, 138-113. The final. Ant dropping 36 points. Tomorrow on the Timberwolves channel on the iHeartRadio app, they get the Wizards at home. Wizards
are terrible.
Copyright noon to 3. Is this 5-game winning streak a trend or mirage?
Well, on our show, we call it astute or asinine, going way, 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 way back. But whatever expression you want to use for it, I don't know yet. I think it's encouraging. I think the tricky part is they're in a part of a schedule that's very soft. So are they streaking in part because of that? Or is it, no, we're figuring some things out and we're taking full advantage of softness? And right now, I think most Wolves fans would take that in a minute. Would say, look, the way this team has messed around even against inferior teams, they are showing me a greater serious of purpose if they can take full advantage of a stretch of games that indeed includes some very beatable teams. You mentioned certainly the Wizards fall into that category. Utah falls into that category as well. Next segment, I'm going to go into a little bit deeper about the lineup that, in this case, really the head coach was, because of absences, almost forced to go to last night. Because I thought, and again, that's always easier against a really bad team. But I think some doors might have been opened that I hope stay at least partially open, even when some of those players indeed come back.
There's no fan on demand after Bumper to Bumper today because Go for Hockey is having a border battle. Number 4, Minnesota hosts number 17, Wisconsin. You'll hear it right here on the Fan pregame, 6:30, puck drop at 7. If you want to mute TV so you have a visual aid while you're listening to the Fan, because of course you're going to listen to the Fan, I believe it's on Fox 9, both games, today and tomorrow on Fox 9. Any interest before Enough Said, obviously.
Yeah,
leading
that
right up
leads
to
right
Enough
into
Said.
Enough Said at about 10 o'clock.
So,
right.
so you'll be watching anyway.
Of course I will.
You have any interest
I'm the hockey ambassador.
I mean, this is a big-time game.
Yeah, it is a big-time game. And you're going to go, didn't you say?
I am going to go.
I knew it. I knew you were going to be there. You wouldn't.
I have to Uber out of here just to get there in
and
time.
You're going to root for who?
No comment.
You're allowed to say it. It's okay. I'm not going to rip you. I mean, you have your allegiances. It might lean towards Wisconsin, is what you're saying.
I might say Civ a couple times if they score. That's all.
Was our Michigan State showdown last week?
I
was that 2 weeks
believe
ago?
it was. Yeah, recently.
Well,
where they let up 9 goals.
We
one
need to
game.
rebound. Yeah, the second game we came back, although we ended up losing an OT. Was it an OT?
I mean,
or on
it's a tie technically. But
yeah. So let's see. Yeah, they're. How close are we to the start of the postseason?
Getting close.
It's not that far off, is it? In hockey,
springtime.
aren't they a little ahead of basketball?
I think so.
I thought they college basketball. I'm not exactly sure, but I think that's the case. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're more admittedly of a pro hockey program than we are college,
and I am too,
and you are too. But I think they call it a border battle, and I hope you. If I were on Sunday, you could file a live report with me. Instead, maybe you can bore Dave Sinekin with it because he doesn't like talking hockey.
No, he'll give me a courtesy 5 seconds.
Maybe
and that's
5 seconds. Yeah, exactly.
I got one more for you.
Okay.
Pro Bowl Sunday.
Oh, big.
I'm not sure someone could pay me to watch the Pro Bowl.
No, someone couldn't. I literally have no more interest in a flag football version of it than I do at this point a real game. None. Because there's no real game. That's why they're doing flag football. No, I would not. I don't buy the you can kind of see their skill. No, we can't. It's flag football. Now, if you In flag football, do any of them have to wear those? What are those protective helmets
the
called?
Guardian caps?
The Guardian cap. You have to wear a Guardian cap?
About it.
You never know.
Yeah.
No, it does absolutely nothing for me. It's harmless. I mean, but I have no interest in any of the skills competitions. I have no interest in flag football. I understand why they're doing it and what they're trying to do, but there is no amount of money you could pay me to watch it. There's zero interest in the entire, shall we say, football version of an All-Star weekend. Zero interest. Like everybody else, I'm just waiting for Super Bowl number 59. Lavelle at the bottom of the hour. Let's flesh out a little bit more about your Minnesota Timberwolves in a way that I think might be helpful if the head coach follows through. We'll explain next.
The Fan wants to give you a shot to put $1,000 in your hand at the National Cash Contest. Head to KFAN.com and enter the keyword money for this hour. The keyword is money. KFAN.com, keyword money. If you want to know what's happening with your favorite KFAN shows, you can make your voice heard on the Bradshaw and Bryan KFAN text line. Just let us know what you have to say by texting your message to 64686. That's 64686. Standard text message and data rates apply.
Extension of the top 5 at 5 injury update. It appears that Julius Randle has already been listed as out for tomorrow night's game against Washington. Looked like a groin pull of some sort based on his reaction on a very nice drive to the basket. And, Dante DiVincenzo's already out. Conley was a game-time decision out. So guess what? Finchie had to go to the bench. He had no choice but to use his bench last night. Now, as I said during the original top 5 at 5 today, it's easy to get lost in look at all these pieces. How much flexibility he's got. You're playing a really bad team, so you could probably more easily get away with playing your bench against them than anybody else. But again, I have firmly believed that this team should have been playing closer to 9 players all season. And I know that's easier said than done, how you divvy up the minutes, whether that's enough time to let all those players sort of get the feel for a ball game. But there are teams who do it. And my assumption all along was this would be the season that we went more that direction. Instead, it's been more like 7.5. I'm hoping that using as much bench as Finchie had to last night, that he rethinks his approach, even when people start coming back to get healthy. Luka was really good last night, very active last night. Dilly, is already starting to see more minutes, but I think this can be a strength of this team down the stretch, being able to play 9 players. And maybe you don't play all 9 every night. Maybe it depends sometimes on matchups, circumstances of the game. But I think all 9 of them should be in the mix more often. And to me, that's where you pay the big bucks to the coaches. That's what they do. It's a challenge to figure the whole thing out. I just don't think you worry about egos at this point. I think you play to. Here's what I think the Wolves get out of their bench that's helpful. The players are not as good, right? But they're willing, they're active, their hunger shows through almost any time they play. And that doesn't mean you can't make mistakes as a hungry player. You can. But energy is a big part of success in this league right now. And let's face it, there have been times, even during this stretch, where the head coach has groused about the energy he has not had, largely from the people who start the ball game. So I hope the door has been opened, that his mind has been opened to try to find. He's got a great staff. He's a bright guy, to find creative ways to mix and match and to use a team that's got a lot of interesting pieces that go beyond the main players that we've talked about. So we'll see how that goes. Randall, obviously being out to a certain extent, there's already some stuff that, I think, once again, probably means you're going to see more of Luka. And we all know, we've been talking about freeing Luka Garza for years on this show, and we're well aware that he's got some defensive liabilities, right? Alert the media, Lindbergh, baby. But if I'm doing this right, I'm saying, well, I might be willing to accept some of that and in return get some offensive energy and maybe even a little bit of versatility from him that I can work with, that I can try to draw out, particularly against a certain opponents. I don't think that should be as sacrilegious and crazy as one has suggested. And there are others, like I said, on this club that I think can be very helpful from time to time. So we'll see whether it goes that way. There are teams that play 9 players. It's not illegal. Not easy, but not illegal. And if it goes right, then presumably even your main guys don't have to play perhaps as heavy a minutes as they otherwise would, which usually means they can be fresher. And everybody, I think, wins in that scenario. Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line is open at 646-86 if you want to get in on this subject or any other. By the way, there was an emotional moment last night in Utah. You know what it was? Brett Blakemore? You wouldn't because you're a hockey guy. In Utah, there was also a flower-like emotional moment.
It wasn't when Sidney Crosby scored the overtime winner against Utah, was it?
No. This is in the basketball.
Okay. Oh, okay.
This is in the basketball game. Joe English, your guy, Inglis, who used to play there, got a rousing ovation last night. Rousing ovation. Warm reaction from the fans. Now, again, not quite on the, I would say, I'm not going to put it on the same plateau as the Flower deal. Not quite there, but worthy of perhaps a little bit of consideration. Julius Randle news, which we already passed along. Wait a minute. Enough Said isn't filmed live. Zach is bitter. I wish we could do it. I'd prefer to do it live, but then that means convincing Lori Fisher, who works days generally, to come back to the office or stay in the office till 9:30 at night. And part of the problem with the live part is we're moving around a lot these days because of all the sports on Fox 9 on Friday night. So different nights. I mean, we could be live at midnight on some occasions. So that is a little bit, that puts a crimp in all of our schedules, you could say. But yeah, I would do it. I would have no difficulty.
Nothing was worse than when we had Michael Wilbon on the show, and I looked up and saw PTI on the screen.
Well, yeah,
that's ruined everything.
It's a very good point. That's very, very different, is it not? Dan, I'm getting texts like crazy. Barnesville is my hometown. This is it's Derek, your bald brother from another mother, brand manager at 740 The Fan in Fargo. So apparently people are aware that we've been talking a lot about Barnesville and the possibility that we might attend the Potato Festival. Or is it Potato Days? What did I say? I can't remember. Potato Days, which is in during training camp. Well, training camp might actually be over by then. I think we said it was late August, right before the state fair. So apparently word is circulating that Barnesville is getting significant attention on today's edition of the Bumper to Bumper Show. Get ready to head up to Ely or somewhere. Well, I guess, no, let me read this better. If you were to go to Barnesville, that would get you ready to head up to Ely or somewhere really wild. Is Ely wild?
Whoa.
What do we know about Ely? Do they have a festival?
I mean, we know that
they do.
It's very close to Canada. I'm looking at the Potato Days.
Does it look festive?
Well, it does. They've got a whole bunch of different events, but it's August 22nd, 23rd, and 24th.
Okay.
So that's a weekend. So you could now maybe
do a Friday show from there. Is that the 22nd? Is that Friday?
I believe it is.
All right.
Now, it'll be that time of year where you're not probably planning to do any more remotes than you already have to with the state fair, but we can work around that.
That's true. We could work around that, yeah. It depends. Well, we'll take it under consideration. It's not a bad idea. I mean, we used to have a Maynard's Summer Stock series where we did every Friday show from Maynard's. Now, location-wise, that's a little easier. But maybe we need to do like a bumper-to-bumper summer stock series all over the state of Minnesota. Get to know the state of Minnesota in a given summer on, every Friday night. I want to overcommit because that'd be a lot of driving, it would seem. But maybe that's how, I'm not one of us. Maybe that's how I get to know the state a little bit better.
Is there a driver sponsor?
Well, possibly.
That could take you
Carry
around.
Limo. Our good friends at Carry Limo. There it is.
You can bring Mace.
In real time. That's true. Well, that'd be the only way Mace would even consider going. That much is for sure. I don't think Lavelle's coming into studio to surprise us. It would have been nice, but he has confirmed that he will check in with us as soon as we wrap up a very short pause here in the Fan. Programming Director Chad Abbott and a number of our listeners reminding me that Ely has the Blueberry Festival. Rick in Shoreview, the Blueberry Arts Festival is every July. Adam from Duluth, Oxcart's Days in Crookston, Minnesota is in August as well. And every Friday tour of the Land of Rocks and Cows, citing Sir Tim Walls, by the King of KFAN would be awesome. That's Adam in Plummer, Minnesota. Don't forget, Tom Brady is from Browerville, Minnesota. So maybe maybe the idea is we brand statewide the way the Star Tribune is now attempting to do. Maybe we need to do more of that and become less metro-centric. Would that be a good thing? Even though, most of our audience is in the metro area. It's the beauty of the iHeartRadio app. It's also been suggested that I could do a show from my hometown in Gary, Indiana. That would be interesting because there are, as he points out, a lot of Gary, Indiana greats, huge names, many of them still alive. Whether I could actually get them there, that's unlikely, but that doesn't necessarily mean I couldn't get them on the phone. But I don't know. Would a Minnesota-based audience, largely, with that being their wheelhouse, would they be bored with me waxing nostalgic about my hometown of Gary, Indiana? I don't want to be, too egocentric in that regard because you want an audience to also share in the festivities. Our next guest is not from Gary, Indiana, but he's familiar with it because he's a Chicagoland kid like myself. We have found Lavelle. He joins us via the Connecticut Water Systems Hotline. What about the idea of me going back to Gary, Indiana to do a show from there? What do you think? Think anybody here would care?
Well, here's the thing, Dan. There would be some people would care because there's a lot of Chicago Bears fans who live in this area,
That's
and
true.
Many of them are from Gary because I've met them at Allery's Bar and Barbecue.
Ah, okay.
And they probably would be interested or actually feel sad for you to return to Gary and do a show.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Well, we'll see. We're talking about maybe taking the show on the road all summer. I don't know. That might get a little bit difficult and complicated. It might be too expensive. And
Hey, you talking about summer stickball series is coming back?
in effect, but in this case, instead, this would be a wider range of possibilities than just like downtown Minneapolis. It would be like really making stops throughout the state.
Oh, good Lord. Really?
Yeah, Ely, Minnesota, Blueberry Arts Festival, for example.
How's the internet, do you think, in Ely
you can
for the
broadcast
Blueberries?
from Fortune Bay Casino.
Well, that's a possibility too. That's very, very true, Davey. So we'll see. We'll take everything under advisement. It's been a good conversation piece today because we're kind of, it's a little bit Abyss-like. A lot of talk about, like Barnesville, they've got Potato Days in Barnesville. Apparently, it's a 3-day weekend in late August that is, traditional and very historic and very entertaining and a lot of fun. I don't know. How much can we learn about potatoes? I'm not sure.
Well, Dan, I feel, just to make sure you have company, I'm more than happy to accompany you for these trips, and I can bring copies of my book and sell them to the masses while we're doing the show.
Oh, I like that. That's even better. There it is. It's a very good point.
Let's make this happen.
It could happen. We'll see. There's plenty of time. Yes, you need to get out into greater Minnesota, which we call God's country. A lot of places call. I mean, don't a lot of places say we're God's country though? That's not new, I don't think.
Could you do a show from Lou's cabin up north?
We've done that. Yeah, we did do that once.
Yeah.
Cabin?
Okay.
You mean mansion? It's cabin in quotes. I mean, he can safely entertain and house, I think, like 50 people. That's generally speaking more than a cabin. You know what I'm saying?
Oh my God, that's a lake home.
Yeah, well,
wow.
Yeah, it's a lake. It's several lake homes actually, is what it is. Interesting, John from Edina. This is for you, Dan. Do you think Lavelle Neal III will vote Flower in on the first ballot, or he won't because he doesn't like people to get in on the first ballot? It never stops.
No, it does not. It does not. Is that? I have to give credit for people being creative and carrying the bit on. It's a bit that won't quit. That's what I told Corey Cole.
Yeah.
It's a bit that won't quit. But I mean, you could not help but getting all the warm and fuzzy feelings last night to watch how that transpired. Towards the end of the game, when they gave him a lengthy standing ovation, and the Canadians, stayed on the ice after getting waxed to congratulate him and shake his hand, and it was just such a classy, organic response by the crowd that you can't force. You just let it happen, and you just revel in it when it happens. That was the best that sports has to offer last night at the Wild Canadians game. We led the show with it. In fact, if you'll permit me, why don't we all listen to it again? Because I think it's about 2.5 minutes long, Lavelle, but it's worth every minute. Even though visually it's better than just listening to it, I think listening to it is very effective as well. This is how it played out last night in Montreal.
Participation au match des étoiles, un trophée Vizina, 3 coupes Stanley et le deuxième rang de tous les temps pour les victoires par un gardien de but dans la LNH. The Canadians would like to recognize Quebec native Marc-André Fleury on the legendary career. 5 All-Star appearances, 1 Vizina trophy, 3 Stanley Cups, and a second place all-time for victories by an NHL goaltender. Félicitations Marc-André. Congratulations.
That's the sweet spot, Lavelle. Last night was the sports sweet spot. We rarely get there, but we were reminded about why we pay attention to this nonsense day in, day out, week after week, month after month, year after year.
Yes, indeed. And once again, just pure class by the Montreal Canadian fans. Très bien. Bon temps for Marc-André Fleury.
I had no idea you were so conversant in the French dialect, French Canadian dialect. Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. Who knew? I had absolutely No working idea. Now, I should have known how versatile you are. Any other languages you want to grace us with right now?
No, there's another language I speak when I watch Bears games, but that's not repeatable on air.
No, that's a very, very good point. That's probably indeed true. I'll ask you the same question I asked. Who was it yesterday I brought this up with? I don't remember. That was so long ago. It might have been Chip Scoggins. Our two winter pro sports teams are heading for, the second half of their seasons. They're both in sort of interesting studies right now. The Wild seem to be riding the ship after, getting back on the road. They're playing better again, although their best player obviously is out for an extended period of time. Wolves have now won, is it 5 in a row? I think this is at last measure. They've got Washington tomorrow night without Julius Randle. He has already been ruled out of that game, and there's a chance of that groin injury that could be sustained for a while. Of the two teams, if you're projecting and you say, okay, which of these two teams has a better chance to get something going for the postseason, which way are you going, hockey or basketball?
Get something going toward the postseason. I think the Wolves are doing that right now. It looks like they've had a little bit of a breakthrough here with trying to gel and find roles for everybody. Finchie has had to go deeper into his bench, and he's got guys like Dillingham who can give him some quality off the bench. And as you saw last night, Luka Garza, once he gets to Utah, he becomes a different person. And he was able to contribute. And even this was Jaden Clark. I didn't even know he was on the roster, able to come in and contribute as well. So it looks like they're starting to get over the hump here. And it was a treat watching Finchie get tossed the other night. I didn't know that was his first career ejection. In this town, we're used to watching our managers get tossed from games. So that was a little surprising that Finch has only been – that was the only game that Finchie has been dismissed from. So I think right now I put the Wolves in front of the Wild. But the Wild situation is a little different, Dan, because they've got house money to play with because they played so well out of the gate. And, at one point they were considered like one of the top 2-3 teams in the league. So they had a little bit of a cushion here. I got to check and see how much of that cushion has eroded in recent weeks, dealing with all these injuries. And now they know that Kaprizov's going to be out for at least another month. And how can they, sustain some success without, one of the best players in the league, one of the superstar players in the NHL, unavailable to them? They're going to have to get scoring from elsewhere. Rossi's got to step up. I know he didn't have a shot 2 games ago, but he got a goal yesterday, which was encouraging. Boldy, Eck, they can't really afford any more injuries right now. So I think the Wolves are starting to gain momentum. I think the Wild are trying to find that momentum, but they're in a better position than the Wolves because of how they started the season. So, we can look up 6 weeks from now and see both teams, in favorable positions in their respective conferences. So, and that would be a good thing because I think that was what a lot of people expected from the Wolves going into the season. And they've been delighted by what the Wild has done. And they're trying to stem the tide here because of the injuries. It's crazy how they play so well on the road and are an absolute horse bleep at the Xcel Energy Center. That's something you have to deal with. But, I like both teams' chances of being somewhat relevant once the postseason begins.
Well, it'd be refreshing if you could have, both teams at least be relevant in the postseason. I'm not saying, win the whole thing. That's probably unrealistic. Right. But just, we're tired of the first round eliminations. And obviously the Wolves got well past that a year ago. And now the Wild are in the position where the onus is on them to do exactly that. And I think, oddly, the Wild's expectations have probably been raised by their regular season success. So
correct.
It may well be that if they lay an egg again in the first round, they're going to hear there's going to be more blowback than there would otherwise be if they had just meandered through the entire season. Now, the home road thing is weird. I don't know if we're ever going to get to the bottom of that. But clearly, look, we know Anthony Edwards is a star player. And he's already proven that, even though there's still some rough edges that need to be worked out. Kaprizov represents the same kind of, main guy. So obviously, this surgery has to be successful, right? You can't I thought it was a smart move to get it. But as even Bill Guerin told us on the show, there's no guarantees. You open somebody up and maybe there's a little something else wrong or it becomes a complication. But I think they decided, rightly, we got enough hockey on the back end. We've got that missed time for the tournament. Let's take advantage of that scheduling quirk. And if it goes according to what we think, he's still going to have a bunch of games to get himself ready for the playoff grind. So I think it was absolutely the right move to not try to go in drips and drabs, and we're going to throw him out there and see if he gets a little bit better. He clearly wasn't feeling well. He clearly did not like the fact that he was playing at 60%. So you got to try, medically speaking, to resolve it.
And, in contrast to that, you wonder if the Twins had to do it all over again, would they have shut down Carlos Correa when he had plantar fasciitis in each one of his feet over the last 2 years? Would he just been better off shutting it down or having it addressed some way and try to get him ready for September? It got to the point last year where he just had to play because the team was starting to slide and they needed him, and he had to start playing regardless if he was 80% or not. So, and this is a lesson that, not to mess around with these things, because if they start nagging, it could become a nuisance and affect their overall play. And if you're compensating for one leg that's going haywire on you, then sometimes you hurt the other leg while doing that. It seems like there's a lot more to gain by taking the big picture view when an injury like this occurs, instead of saying he can play through it.
100% true. Lavelle, of course, is brought to us by Allery's Bar in St. Paul, your home of free parking and wild shuttles as well. This is the tweener week before, of course, Super Bowl 59. And a lot of the discussion this week, at least on this show, has been people carping about not really being all that excited about this matchup for various reasons. We know why. It's too much familiarity with Kansas City. And with the Eagles, it's hatred of largely of Eagles fans. But I'm here to tell you that I think it will be watched it'll be one of the most watched Super Bowls ever, because in the end, these are two really good teams, and it's the Super Bowl. And so I think despite all the whining, I don't think it's the kind of whining that means people really, when push comes to shove, are not going to watch the game.
Yeah, I'm listening to all that complaining too about the Chiefs and them getting favorable calls all the time, which I'm not buying, and how can you get behind either one of those teams. One, usually I think people want to see the dragon get slayed, so that ends up being a reason to turn the television on.
Exactly.
And I think that's going to be the case with Kansas City going forward, going for unprecedented third straight Super Bowl championship. I know Packer fans are like, well, we won 3 straight titles. It just wasn't called the Super Bowl. Well, I don't care. This is a Super Bowl era record. So stop trying to weasel your way in on history here. So I'm curious to see that. And, I'm biased, Dan, because I worked in Kansas City for 9 years, and I know how crummy they were when I was there. Because, Steederberg was the quarterback when I first got there. And then it was Dave Craig. Yeah. And then I think that's when they went the Joe Montana route. Because remember, one year they went to the conference championship game with Joe Montana and your boy Marcus Allen in the backfield. And then they went Joe Montana, Steve Bono, Elvis Gerback, and I missed a couple other guys before they got to Trent Green. So those are just rough days. And my Chiefs fans, friends who are fans, were suffering. So I'm happy for them because they've been able to have their day in the sun here. And I don't know why people dislike Pat Mahomes. I think it's a pretty cool story, how he's been to 7 straight conference finals as a Chiefs quarterback. Of course, there's a semi-connection here with his father having pitched for the Twins. So I think Mahomes is a guy people can root for. And Philly, Philly's what, the 5th, 6th largest market in the country. Yeah. They're gonna bring a lot of attention. The East Coast is going to pay attention to Philadelphia. So I think by the time the anthem song and the flyovers are over, and what other pregame performances they have, it's going to be a massive viewing crowd to check out this Super Bowl.
By the way, don't forget about our guy, Rich Gannon. He spent some time in Kansas City before he ended up, obviously, with having great success in Oakland. Gannon was in Kansas City, too.
He's one of those guys. Yeah, he's in that list. I think he was pre-Trent Green, I think. So I had to go back and look at that list. It was I looked at the list and, I forgot about those days. We used to run into Steve DeBerg in bars, and, man, he liked to have a good time.
Is that true? Gannon's last 2 seasons were 97, and he played in 12 games in 1998, and then he went to the Raiders in 1999 for the record. We got to try to get him on next week, although Super Bowl week, he's a very busy guy. You know, he's all over Sirius XM National Football League, that channel. But a good example.
Your Rolodex is so deep, though, Dan. I'm sure you could find other people. I mean, it'd be great to get Gannon.
Well, to be honest,
you got Salisbury. You got a couple other people you can lean on too.
That's true. The Guardian have talked about this a lot. That Super Bowl week here, we loved when the bowl was here the second time. And Radio Row was at Mall of Hysteria because the guest lineup, I mean, because then more people are available to you. They'll just sort of take them around table to table. It's a great thing. And even this year, we talked about it before. It's like, well, is it worth going just because of the access you get to just some unbelievable guests? And that's the one beautiful thing about being there. And again, it's a letdown. For Vikings fans, you say, is it worth it financially to do it because the local team isn't there? But man, oh man, if you play it right, you can end up having good conversations with a lot of really good people.
No doubt. Yeah, just the media presence is amazing, and the number of former players that show up. I still remember the Super Bowl when it was here.
Yeah.
First, bar times are rolled back to 4 a.m., which was very interesting and entertaining. Two, I didn't realize how many friends I had who were covering the NFL at the time because they were all in town, and I was able to kind of catch up with a lot of people. And three, there was a couple of really huge events that just brought out everybody. Like I met a bunch of former players and most of the Chicago writers that there's a annual Ron Jaworski, Mike Dick a cigar event that raises money for like NFL alumni or whatever, and it was downtown. And it was massive,
Yeah.
All the former players walking around. It was just, kind of a sight to behold. So, it's a great event. And yeah, if it's in your town, you may want to, the traffic and the gridlock may drive you up the wall. But man, there was a payoff once you were able to, get into the media zones, the work zones. I think you probably remember this too. You were set up at the mall, right?
Correct.
Weren't you from during that week?
Oh yeah, we did shows all week from the mall, and we had all kinds of outstanding. That's where, 1 minute you're talking to Mike Holmgren, for example, because they're making him available. Under no other conditions probably are we likely to get him, and he's a good interview. He's been out of the game for a while, obviously, but you end up getting. We had I don't know if we had him in person or not, but we might have got him by phone. Jack Youngblood, the old L.A. Ram. Who, honest to God, Lavelle, if I'm ranking in my career the best interviews I've ever had, Jack Youngblood might be top 10. And it wasn't like I had any, personal relationship with him. I just got to know him over the years, covering stuff in various, venues and so forth. And he's just a great interview. And he's a guy who played with a broken leg. Jack Youngblood played on a broken leg, which seems absurd, but was true. So that's the beauty of the bowl is you get access to people that under normal conditions, they probably ain't going to come to you. But in this case, that's sort of what they're either paid to do or they're sort of conditioned to do. I'll just go from place to place. I'll go from radio station to talk.
Now, didn't they also put 2 Boston sports talk stations near each other?
Yeah,
and
it was a big
came to blows.
They almost had a fight. That's true too. Yeah, that's unfortunately that's sad but true. But those things happen.
Yeah.
But that was one of the stories, Super Bowl week. Yeah, I wasn't there for the brawl, but they ended up having to be sent to separate parts of that location up on. I want to say it was on the 3rd floor at the Mall of Hysteria during Super Bowl week. What are you writing about this weekend, by the way?
I had a conversation with a local skier who is having her best season.
Oh, wow.
On the tour, Paula Molton, who was born in Prior Lake and went to Lakefield for 2 years before she moved to Lavelle to chase her skiing dreams, and she's having her best year now. She was on the 2022 Beijing team, and she finished, I gotta remember, 7th in slalom and 12th in giant slalom, and she's ranked 15th in the world right now. As we're going into the last year, we know the Beijing, the Italy Olympics is just 13 months away.
Wow.
You know, and so she just finished. She reached the podium for the first time 2 weeks ago in an event in Italy, and the World Alpine Skiing Championships start Tuesday in Austria, and she's going to be there, and Lindsey Vohn's going to be there too. And so I was just, it's time to start keeping up with some of our local folks here as they start, as the Olympics are kind of slowly but surely approaching. Definitely the Olympic trials.
You're so eclectic, are you not? I mean, you're so. A lot of people think, well, he's a bats and balls guy. Lavelle, baseball, football, basketball, and it turns out you're more than willing, especially during the Abyss, to write about the more esoteric stuff as well. Correct?
Well, yeah, covering the Olympics in Beijing got me. It just got me because I'd never been in a situation like that. I'd never been among that many media in one place.
Yeah.
Even with COVID, and we were restricted in our movements somewhat. And I never covered curling before, and I knew John Schuster from because I had a bad habit of running into the curling team right before they would leave for the previous two Olympics. So I would run into them at a local restaurant and have a couple of beverages with them. So I already knew those guys. Covering skiing, which was amazing, taking the bullet train to the mountain, and then you get to the bottom of the mountain, and you look up toward the top, you're like, these people actually ski down this thing. They are nuts. They're absolutely out of their minds. It's almost like it's a straight drop from the top of the mountain.
Yes,
and they're on skis.
It is nuts. Yeah, it's crazy.
So I became fascinated with a lot of this stuff. And covering hockey, it served me well because I met Brett Faber there. Brock Faber.
Right.
I met a bunch of women's hockey players who were on the Frost. Lee Steckline and Coyne Schofield and Taylor Heisey. Well, I mean Heisey. I met her afterwards, but so I said I got to keep up with these people. Off and on over the 3.5 years before the next Olympics come. And so you're going to see more of that mixed in here as we go forward.
Yeah, there's no question. But by the way, I was just thinking back, Super Bowl week also, that's when we had the opportunity to chat in person with Sheila E. And
wow.
The funniest part about it, and it was probably the best interview we had all week. And what's funny about it is we're in a break, and Guardsy comes up and he says, hey, he said, Sheila E.'s person is just kind of looking around. I mean, she wants to come on, but nobody seems to want to have her on. Would you have her on? I said, are you kidding me? Of course I have Sheila E. on. Are you out of your mind? And it might have been the best interview we had all weekend. It was great or whole week. Obviously, she was close with Prince. We talked about that. But beyond that, she grew up in the Bay Area. Her father was a very accomplished musician, played in all kinds of groups. She grew up with Tower of Power, a number of other groups as well. And so, yeah, that was you never knew who was going to show up on Super Bowl week. So that was probably the most memorable interview we had the entire week.
And she probably was impressed with your connection to Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis.
Well, it didn't hurt. Yeah, it didn't hurt. I mean, she didn't know it as we started it, but we might have. He might have name dropped a little bit. It might have been.
You got to pull a Rosen. You got to pull a Rosen.
Of course you do. 100%. All right, we'll be reading this Sunday. We appreciate the time as always, and we will chat next week.
Okay, my man. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks, Lavelle. Have a great weekend. That's Lavelle, brought to us by Allery's Bar in St. Paul, Minnesota, your home of free parking and wild shuttles. We have a half hour yet to go. We're going to explore 2 or 3 subjects that we examined earlier in this show. Could be very controversial, but you'll have to come back and find out.
Don't miss out. One OK Rock is storming the Armory with their high voltage performance. Be there for an epic night of rock June 7th with special guest Stan Atlantic. They're great. Check out the contest page to see how you can win your way in. KFAN.com keyword contest center today.
Well, we are kind of in the abyss. I guess technically the abyss is supposed to start when the Super Bowl is over and the Pro Bowl is over. The abyss starts early here because we never get to the Super Bowl anymore. But whenever you believe the abyss, sports abyss starts, I think it's a time where there is more discussion for us on this station and on this show about the more esoteric sports, because you say, well, what else are we doing? I mean, we're biding our time on pro basketball and professional hockey, and we're not going to do a lot of hot stove league stuff involving the Minnesota Twins. I guess the next big story might well be the announcement on who the next the owners are going to be of the Minnesota Timberwolves. Who's going to win that tussle? That announcement, I think most folks think, is coming within the next week or so. So stay tuned for that. And it could come at any point, in all honesty. I wonder if they'd ever do it as a Friday evening or afternoon news dump. You know, that cliche? I don't know. I mean, maybe it'll be later tonight. Tomorrow is Feb 1. So we're getting probably closer and closer to that. But I've said before that I think I ended up covering 7 Olympics, and I don't know the breakdown between winter and summer. I think I actually ended up covering more winter than summer. And to Lavelle's point, the beauty of it, for me, certainly, was that it did kind of refresh you in that you spend all your time on the obvious stuff, the traditional stuff, football, basketball, baseball, hockey. The idea that you're suddenly, writing about different sports and different people, that includes, might include alpine skiing, or it might include figure skating, or whatever the case may be. It was refreshing because the stories are different. The athletes are different. And when you only do it, generally speaking, once every 4 years, it's a nice change of pace. And I don't know. I mean, I didn't spend a lot of time doing, I think, other than the Olympics, the luge, for example. But it's kind of cool, right? When you see, especially when you see it up close and personal. Real quick, I've got CNN on in the background, and there is a story indicating, well, actually, there's visuals of it as well, Dateline Philadelphia, that apparently a single-engine plane has crashed near a mall in Philadelphia. And I'm looking at shots that indicate a pretty significant amount of smoke, although it looks like maybe they've started already to put the fire out. Big crowd in the foreground. So if we get more details on that, in this case, it is believed to be a single-engine plane, a smaller plane that has crashed near a mall in Philly. And right now, let's be honest, any story involving any kind of plane mishaps is going to get more attention because of what took place the other night in Washington, D.C., or over Washington, D.C. CNN also has released a new angle of video from the collision, which is very vivid. I don't know that it necessarily changes the story in any significant way, but it is different from the video we've seen. And there's a belief, an assumption, there's going to be a lot more video because there's a million cameras in the nation's capital, right? A lot of different angles, a lot of different buildings have cameras on their roofs. So that may bring some insight to the story. Who's to say? But that's where we are regarding what looks like a potentially dangerous situation, particularly if the crash ended up being the headline they're using is near a mall, which maybe would indicate it didn't happen in the mall, but it did end up in the ground, and we know no details about whether the persons in the plane survived, the size of the plane, other than it's described as a single-engine plane, and who might have been hurt on the ground in Philadelphia as well. So if we get more details on that before we are done at 6:30, we will let you know. Dr. Phil is back from St. Michael. Dan, personally, I would love to hear a show out of Gary, Indiana, and listen to you wax nostalgic about it. But I'm from the middle of nowhere in Iowa, so hearing about any place like that, especially Gary, Indiana, it's history, and that always would appeal to me. Well, middle of nowhere in Iowa, there might be some interesting stories there, too. Who's to say?
I can confirm.
You can confirm exactly it. Guardsy can confirm.
Yeah.
But yeah, Gary, Indiana does have very interesting, it's a mess now, we all know that, but a very interesting history with a lot of surprisingly huge sports names, for example, that were born and raised in Northwest Indiana as well. And I'm going to get more information on Barnesville, Minnesota Potato Days. Find out what else I can get there, and maybe a few other festivals worthy of our consideration too. Let's get one more break in. Are we putting a grant in anybody's hand, or is this a freebie? It is not. So we'll pause, come back, wrap up the show, and remind you of what you might have missed earlier. A very emotional start to the Friday edition of the Bumper to Bumper program. Stay tuned.
It's the Bumper to Bumper show wrap.
It's brought to you by American Pressure.
Some of the video now coming out of Philadelphia regarding a small plane, described as a single-engine plane in some media reports, crashing near a mall in Philly, is it's significant. So I have no idea, how much damage has been done, if anybody has been injured as well. But coming in close proximity to what took place in Washington, it's probably a story that's going to get more attention than it otherwise would. So if we get any more detail on it before the end of the show, we will pass it along to you. Tonight is, I'm assuming, Fan on Demand in the air, and then what?
So no Fan on Demand, straight into Border Battle preview.
You told me. You're right. Yeah, Border Battle, exactly it. Your Wisconsin Badgers, who you will be cheering heavily for, just admit it, it's okay, against the homestanding Golden Gophers, correct?
That would be correct.
Okay, nothing wrong with it.
We'll see what happens.
Enough Said tonight because I think that game's also on Fox 9. So Enough Said is scheduled to begin at 10 o'clock tonight on Fox 9, right about 10 p.m. And Guardsy is out because he's in Southern California tracking the Gophers. So it's Lori Fisher, it's Pierre Nugent filling in for Guardsy and me. And we stay pretty heavily, pretty much exclusively in the toy department. A lot of sports stuff, Wild early, some Wolves, and then we get into some Super Bowl discussion and even some halftime show stuff as well. So that will be tonight. If you missed earlier in the program, no Gerb Schmidt this week because there's no picks to do this week. We were not going to pick. I think one year we did do a pick segment, including the Pro Bowl, just for the hell of it. But I think we're bored with that now. So Gerby will be back next week, Super Bowl week, for that prediction segment. Guardsy should be back for that as well. So we were wide open between 3 and 4. Spent a lot of time on the remarkable scene in Montreal last night, the salute to the hometown kid, Flower. Played that audio a couple times now during the show. And eventually we got into some A-section stuff in the 4, and then it was Ben Gessling bringing us back to the toy department, so a combination of both Vikings and National Football League discussion. And with Lavelle, we kind of covered the waterfront on a number of different subjects, including the ongoing notion that people are bored with this Super Bowl matchup, even though the same people who say they're bored will absolutely, positively watch the thing, likely from start to finish. It's a good matchup. What is, you know what? I haven't even checked. Do you know the spread or some of the spreads in this game? Kansas City trying to make history to win their 3rd in a row for Mike Yo against the Philadelphia Eagles. Rematch.
So I've got, let's see, every outlet has the Chiefs as a 1.5 point favorite.
1.5 point favorite.
I mean, like I was saying, that's a good football game to watch.
Exactly right.
But
how do you argue with that?
There a lot of the outside, whether it's the Philly fans or the Swift angle, the Kelsey angle, I think that's more what annoys people. But the actual football X's and O's is going to be an elite game, I think.
Well, that's what I thought we wanted, right?
You would think.
You'd think that's the goal. These are two very good teams. They've had outstanding regular seasons. Philly, I think, has been underappreciated by many people, including me, because I didn't think they looked all that great in either of their victories before the title round game. But they're here, so you're back to, at some point, you have to accept. And they're very fundamentally strong at the line of scrimmage as well. Can I play devil's advocate, if only to avoid groupthink on the idolatry of the Fleury reception last night? He shut out a mediocre Canadians team. But beyond the outcome and the magic of the shutout, the sweet spot moment, as Dan calls it, in my view, is the community and collective experience of the Canadians fans. Arguably more a moment of solidarity for them, celebrating Fleury, but expressing to all the NHL teams he's played that, hey, he's our guy, he's one of us. Well, I think I would say respectfully to 3010 guy, 319 guy. I don't think either one of us or anybody has made it about, hey, shut out the Montreal Canadiens. In fact, I think we've said several times they're not very good. It doesn't hurt, no matter how good or bad the team is, that on the night you're being saluted to the degree you are, as warmly and emotionally as you are, you also get a shutout. You never have to apologize for a shutout, and it's the fact that he made history last night because he's the only goaltender in the history of the league to get a shutout as a teenager and at the age of 40 or older. So I would say respectfully to 319 guy, you're trying too hard to play devil's advocate there. None of us made it mainly about that anyway. We made it about the moment, the sweetness of the moment, the depth of the emotion of the salute. For whatever reason they were doing it, this is a player who league-wide, forget Montreal, where he's from, league-wide, is as loved a superstar goalie or player as the league has probably ever had. That's part of the point. He's extremely popular, above and beyond being respected. So whether it's, if they want to make it that they were saluting this guy because he's ours, that adds to the sweet spot. That's the point, is that they are moved enough to offer that kind of reaction about a player who was never a member of the Montreal Canadiens. So, in any case, I think it's a fairly easy rejoinder, I would say, and an answer to that as well. So yeah, CNN's like going like live and full bore on whatever is taking place in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Still I've not heard any more details on. Now there's a piece of video that even actually shows an explosion. I don't know if that's the plane crashing or that took place after the plane crash and it hit a place where then an explosion ensued. I'm not exactly sure. But it certainly looks like some damage has been done. So hopefully there will be no loss of life or significant injury, too. So I'm off. I'm doing a little load management this week on Sunday sermons, the fan has learned. It's a good week to be off because there ain't a lot going on. I'm sick of the sound of my own voice. Sinekin doesn't mind filling in. You have a good vibe with Sinekin. You guys can turn half of it into Packer Preview. Correct. Even though you get in trouble when you do. Yes. I think you're given a little bit more leeway on the weekend. But maybe not. Maybe I'm wrong. Because Abbott, he pays attention to all these things, as you know. I don't have to tell you that. So it'll be the two of you between 9 and 11 on Sunday morning. I'm hoping Guardsy's back Monday because I know the Gophers still, I don't know when they play the women, the basketball team. They play UCLA, I'm assuming, tomorrow. Possibly Sunday. They lost to USC last night.
UCLA is Sunday.
Sunday, okay.
So it'll be a photo finish
who's
for
to
Monday.
Say? Yeah, maybe he won't be back. I don't know. I have no idea.
Well, I'll be around.
If not, you'll be around, and we'll get whatever done we need to get done, because next week will be Super Bowl week, and so we will ramp up some guests to that end. We tend to not milk it for 2 weeks, but we try to ratchet it up, even though we're not in it for week number 2. Ooh, hell no. By then, who knows? Maybe we're going to have puffs of white smoke on the new Quasi deal. We got the new KFC deal. We're all waiting on the new Quasi deal, and we're also, there's the Darnold domino that's got to fall at some point. Maybe we get a little bit more insight, some intel in that regard. I don't think we're going to get any announcements, but we'll see. Maybe we get, because that's the first question that really is crucial to whatever answers might follow about where the money's going to go, how ambitious the Vikings are going to be. We know they're going to need help at offensive line. We know they're going to definitely need help at corner. We still don't even know who all they're going to bring back. They're not going to bring back all the free agents that players that are free agents on the roster. So it'll be a combo platter, and we are working as we get closer to the abyss on some other very good in-studio guests with some announcements indeed yet to come. I continue to toy with trying to figure out a new podcast because everybody else has one, and I feel like I need to have one. And we're toying with the idea of calling it Not One of Us. So the bit would be that if you were born here, you cannot be featured on the podcast. So what it ends up being is people who are based here in whatever walk of life. And so the entree is, how'd you get here? what were the circumstances that brought you here? And if you stayed, why did you stay? All that kind of good stuff. And then we can, branch out into other things.
So I was listening when you were toying with it for the first time. I don't know if this guess has been recommended, but I'm going to throw him out there.
Okay.
Got to be Trent Tucker.
Double T's a great idea.
His kids play hockey at Eden Prairie now, and he's from Michigan.
He's a perfect candidate. Another one that's been named and is obvious, but is a good one, is Alan Page.
Yeah.
How much better does it get than Alan Page? He's not one of us, but he got here under football circumstances and stayed, and obviously has greatly distinguished himself. Thank you for listening today. Podcast at your leisure. Talk to Sinekin and Blakemore for sermons on Sunday, and we will talk to you on Monday at 3 p.m.